Hey everyone, how you doing today? It's David, Jersey Boy Music. I'm here in the Beatles corner, which means we are collecting Beatles 101 and we're talking about the Fab Four themselves, right? So today, what I want to do, I've been wanting to do this for a while. I just haven't had the resources to do it up until recently. So some time ago I did a video as far as the best sounding version of Revolver that I had. And I wanted to do another shootout like that on another Beatles album. And this one really needs no introduction. Whether you are a Beatles fan or not, you are at least somewhat aware of the album Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band and the landmark album that it is. So let's get started and see the results I came up with. So to get started, here are the five different stereo versions of Sgt. Pepper that I compared side by side. First version I listened to was this 1970s Japanese Apple pressing. Next was this A1B2 German Odeon Hozu pressing. This one is the 180 gram 2012 vinyl version of the 2009 digital remaster. The American Capitol copy from 1976 up to and including 1978 on the orange Apple label. This is a mastered by Capitol version. And finally, my 2 EMI box Harry Moss mastered Parlophone copy. So these 5 albums are the traditional stereo mix. So the Giles Martin 2017 anniversary stereo version, I did not include in this because it's a different mix. The 2012, like I said in the close-up of that part of the video, is the digital 2009 remaster on vinyl. And I'm including that because that is the traditional stereo mix. Results are going to maybe surprise you a little bit, maybe not. So, of these 5, and this is based on just my ears listening to it through the stereo. I don't have waveform gizmos, and like some other YouTube channel I really enjoy, but you know, he gets a little in depth. And and then, speaking of which, these are versions that you should be able to find on eBay, so you're not getting, you know, like the half speed mastered mobile fidelity version, or you know, the rare version that they only made 500 copies of it, you know, stuff. I'm not doing stuff that's impossible to get. These are versions of the album that you should be able to get at least on eBay or Discogs, online. You might even be able to find them at your favorite local record store on occasion. So, and I'm not going to hold up each album cover either, because except for a label marking, they're all identical. So this is from the least favorite version that I have to my absolute most favorite, in that order. So coming in at number 5 should not be any surprise. It is the Capitol Records orange label version. Now, I might get a first press somewhere down along the line. If so, I'll have to redo the video. But that orange label one from 76, 77, 78 was the one I grew up with. This is a different copy. Got it recently, basically for this video. And it doesn't sound as bad as I remember it to be, but it's not as good as the other versions that I have. One of my biggest complaints about the job Capitol Records did in issuing this album in mono and stereo is that, to me, the sound is just muddy. And, granted, Capitol got the dupe of the master tape from Parlophone, EMI in England. And then they had to make copies of that tape to send off to Scranton and Jacksonville and their other pressing plants. So I'm assuming if you got a Los Angeles pressing of this album, it would probably sound better than what I grew up with. This particular copy, it doesn't sound as muddy as I remember it to be, but there's something missing. Like, I hear bass, I hear some treble, but there's like stuff in the middle that just doesn't sound right. But however, if you got to get a copy and that's available to you, then get a copy of it if it's a nice clean copy just to have in your collection. So what's number 4? So number 4, which is a definite step up from the Capitol Records version, is that Japanese Apple label version. Sounds good. To me, it sounds very similar to the Capitol Records version. I don't know why. You would think, the Japanese version would sound better. It doesn't sound bad. It does sound better than the US version. But it's okay. It's not life altering. And to note that of these 5 versions that I have I'm comparing, Capitol and the Japanese Apple versions do not have the Sgt. Pepper Intergroove on them. The other 3 versions do. So what comes in? Oh, yeah, and it's okay. So basically, to me, to my ears, the Japanese version is kind of flat sounding. It's got, some bass, it's got some, but it's really not exciting. It's not really an audiophile version. It sounds clean, but nothing really exciting. So coming in at number 3, coming in at number 3 is the 2012 digitally remastered version of it was a 2009. I'm saying all this because people are going to say, David, that wasn't remastered in 2012. It was remastered in 2009 and blah, 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 blah. So it's really a 2009 remaster. Okay, for the sake of just, whatevs, I'm calling it the 2012 vinyl version, which I do believe has now been erased out of existence, kind of like how Marty McFly's brother and sister were erased out of existence when he was in 1955. I think it was replaced largely by the 2017 anniversary version, which is a great version. It is essentially the mono version, the mono mix of Sgt. Pepper in stereo. So it's a different mix, which is why, again, it's not included here. So my advice is, if you can find a good copy of that 2012 vinyl version, you are getting a nice, clean, fresh, well-balanced vinyl version of the original stereo mix. It is very well balanced. It's a really good listen. Still wasn't mind-altering or life-altering for me, but still such a step above the other 2 that I have in those bottom 2. So now that leaves us with the top 2. And what are those going to be? Well, one's going to be the German, one's going to be the British. Let's find out. So coming in at number 2, actually, to me, it's so close, it could be a tie, but that German Horzu is just, it's so nice and rich. It's got good treble and that high range. It's got great bass, and it's got the great mids. I mean, just all around, it's a beautiful, beautiful copy of Sergeant Pepper. Um, Definitely one of my favorite copies I've ever listened to. Um, it just, like I said, it's just well rounded. The only problem is that for the casual buyer, those German pressed albums, especially the later ones, Sergeant Pepper and the later albums, they fetch a good amount of money. I really lucked out in getting that copy that I got a few weeks ago. Just so nice, so rich, so pleasant, such a great sounding version. But the number one version that I have has got to be that 2-box EMI Parlophone Harry Moss mastered version of Sergeant Pepper. It is, when I first listened to it, now granted, I got it before I got the German version, but listening to them basically kind of side by side is so close. But I'm going on my initial listen of the Parlophone one, the British version, was just so, oh, it just made me appreciate this album for the masterpiece it is. Such a great, I mean, how do I say this? When you take an album like Sgt. Pepper, which was recorded on 4-track tape, and then they had to, like, they fill up the 4 tracks and they have to bounce down 3 tracks to the first track. And so every time they would bounce the tracks to open up tracks, you're losing fidelity, you're losing sound quality. But the British and the German versions just make it sound so simple and nice and clear and not muddled. And for me, the Parlophone copy that I got, mastered by Harry Moss, and he is like the legendary engineer that did these cuttings and mastering, is just so stinking nice. Really enjoyable. If you are able, and you should be able to find a British pressed Sgt. Pepper, especially one from the 70s going on into the 80s, you can find those pretty affordably on eBay or Discogs. Grab one. It's so nice, and it's all analog. It's got, to me, the clarity and the fidelity of something that's been remastered, only it's all analog, and it just sounds so honest and true and pure that I think you would really enjoy it. So that's my number one pick. So there you go. Fun listening to these. I'm kind of Sgt. Peppered out right now, listening to these 5 versions. But a splendid time was guaranteed for me, and they sure delivered. So I'll leave it there, and until next time, it's me, David, coming to you here from the Beatles Corner, jerseyboymusic.net. If you are looking for vintage vinyl, that'll take you to my eBay store. Please feel free to browse, look around, buy a couple of things. I got bills to pay. I'm buying records. I gotta pay the bills, All right. So until next time, I'll catch you on the flip side. Thank you so much for watching.